specifically something in this, in CAP 73. As I said earlier, it's a very technical. Frankly speaking, I trust the RA team and all the advisors on it, and I'm not going to delve into all of this tier 2 or pillar 2 and pillar 1 and etc. It's not an area that I practice in, and there are lots of people a lot more knowledgeable than me who have done so. I would, though, like to take a look at Article 43, Clause 9A, which is the one which basically allows us to take our small businesses out of this 9% regime and possibly even 15% global minimum tax regime and keep a preferential tax rate for small businesses in Barbados. And I'm supportive of the clause, but it's interesting that the reason I mention it here is that in this particular act, Mr. President, there's an additional criteria that has been added, which I understand why, which the additional criteria now has been added is that your income must be under $2 million. So basically what we're saying is a small business who otherwise qualifies under, I think it is CAP 318C, and has less than $2 million in income can get the reduced tax rate. Again, that is a good thing, sir. I appreciate the government for making sure that we kept that rate. Thank you. It seems that I do represent some small businesses and not just the big ones, it seems. At least some people think so. For once, apparently, for once. I'm also understood, and I'm subject to correction, Mr. President, that there are some 8,000 companies in Barbados that would qualify under there. I'm sure that if I have misspoken, I will be corrected by those in the room later on. And I'm happy to hear what that number is. Sir, in CAP 318C, so let me just go back to the amendment that we're looking at now, Clause 43, as I mentioned, Clause 9, the new Clause 9, says that our small businesses, which are eligible under 318C, sir, and here I will divulge for a moment, sir, and agree with Senator Watson that in trying to read this bill, it is another example where not having all the legislation, all the amendments that have been made over the years in one place makes our job extremely difficult. I personally found 4 different amendments that I had to read and try to incorporate into the principal bill before I could really understand what is here. This needs to be fixed urgently, sir, if we are going to speak in here in an informed way and not make mistakes. Leaving it the way it is, we are going to make mistakes, not just the judges, but in the legislature as well, when we don't see all of these things. So I want to support Senator Watson in her comments on that, comments I've made previously. However, let's go back then to this 318C, and I'm going to make my point on this. 318C sets out for us in Clause 4, I think it is, Clause 3, excuse me, sets out the criteria to determine you must meet 2 criteria of the 3. You must have, to be a small business, you've got to have capital under $1 million, sales under $2 million, or 25 employees or less. So any 2 of those 3 will allow you in that very objective measure to say that you're a small business. There are some other measures which are a bit more complicated, but they're very clear. But the 4th paragraph, sir, of that piece of legislation troubles me. The 4th paragraph, B, paragraph 4B, basically says that the minister has the right to determine if your business is significant or substantial. I don't understand, sir, where this criteria came from. Why, having met all of these other objective criteria, we then have this very subjective criteria that is left there that, in fact, I would have to describe it as arbitrary. Because if you are a individual, one person getting one job in one family, that is substantial. Perhaps the IBM computer, one job for one person, is not substantial. But in the context of Barbados, in the context of a small business, just one job is substantial. I don't need any criteria for that. And I don't understand what is significant. I do not understand why this clause is left in there. But I don't want to dwell too much on it because I want to dwell on the principle. The principle continues to be, and you will hear me, sir, you've heard me many times in here speak to this. Certainty is what businesses want. And introducing this criteria, which none of us can understand exactly why it would be that some individual, maybe a very reasonable person, gets to come through all of these other objective criteria, everything that the law is meant to do, and it comes right to the end and it says, is it significant or substantial socio-economic activity? And with that decision that one individual can make, you are no longer registered as a small business in Barbados. That creates uncertainty. It's perhaps using Barbados parlance, it might be unfair, but the word I will use is arbitrary. And arbitrary in this sense is it's random choice, or perhaps it is personal whim that gets to choose that. So, sir, you know, the last time I spoke in here, I introduced the letters C and F. I now give you A. A for arbitrary. I don't like arbitrary when it comes to our legislation either. I think government should fix this. I think it's a great opportunity to go back and revisit 318C, I think it is, and I think that clause should be removed completely. If you meet the objective criteria, there should be certainty around being registered as a small business. The other thing I would just mention on there is that it would have been the definition of small business. I would have liked to have seen it expanded, and could we have perhaps included, rather than just $2 million, could it have been $3 or $4 or $5 million? Maybe $10 million could have been the threshold. And maybe rather than 25 employees, could it have been a little bit bigger? How far could we have pushed this envelope so as to keep that low tax rate for our young businesses, our small businesses, to keep that lower tax rate without going offside with the international community? I don't know, but that would be something I would ask you to consider. So my last point, and as you know, as I said earlier, I always try to be brief. But whenever I look at this and I see these type of arbitrary things, and I see what I've described as frustration instead of facilitation, I'm also concerned about something else that's happening that's related to this, and it's a small matter right now, but somewhat related to the BRA. I personally believe that Barbadians on the whole, all of us, we want to have a meaningful job, and we want to do something that counts. I believe that we want to do meaningful work. I believe that we all want to contribute to Barbados' development. But sir, there continues to be things in our economy, things that we do, regulations that I do not understand. And it only creates more frustration. And as I have said and made a clear point before, frustration leads to that C word, remember? That's what it leads to, a problem. Sir, today, when you license a vehicle, you know, one of my favorite subjects, when we license a vehicle, you pay a fee. You do not need to pay any more fee ever again on that vehicle because the licensing is included in the tax you pay on the petrol, sir. And it was said that what we would do is that we have a problem in Barbados because the insurance companies report that 20 to 25% of all the vehicles on Barbadian roads, sir, are uninsured. Now, how do they get that statistic? They get the statistic because they know of the accidents, sir. So they know how many accidents, they know how many cars, and they know in those cases how many cars involved in an accident are uninsured. Now, it may be true that it is skewed, and Senator Boyce might correct me and say that those who are uninsured are the reckless drivers, so they're more often in accidents. That might be true, but statistically, the reality is 20 to 25% of all vehicles on the road are uninsured. So this system that we have today, where, and let me explain how it works, on an annual basis, you are required to take your insurance certificate, go to the Revenue Authority licensing office, show them that, to say that you have, yes, it's still required, unfortunately. You know what, most of us don't do it, sir, as I see you shaking your head. Most of us don't do it, because what we understood was going to happen was that the insurance companies were going to electronically correspond, and we would know who was on the road. But I am advised by the car dealership group that that is in fact not the practice, that you have to go and get it. Now, I don't know exactly what, maybe I'm misinformed, sir, but I did some interesting little numbers on this. I am told that we have 130,000 vehicles on the road, sir. There are 365 days in a year most often. Of those, given some holidays and weekends, there are 250 working days. That means that in Barbados, 520 cars per day have to go through this process. 520 cars. When I add up the hours of opening at the various offices to license these cars, I got 18 hours per day. That means that we have to do 29 vehicles per hour to be relicensed. I put this all, sir, within the context of the frustration, the facilitation, and that Barbadians want to do useful work. If you think that on average a car takes an hour to be relicensed, that's 130 hours, 30,000 hours per year that we are wasting. So I don't want to dwell on this, sir, because this is a bigger bill and it has a much bigger ramifications, and I've made my point about the small business. But I wanted to use this to illustrate to you, sir, my continued challenge to government to drive out from the processes these old ways of doing things, find new ways, become efficient, because it doesn't matter what tax regime we put in place. If we continue to frustrate businesses at all levels, this will not work. It will not work for us. So I do hope, sir, that I have raised the point, and I may be, I hope I'm not incorrect, but I may have not filled in all the details on each of the points of it. But I hope that I've raised the point again in here, our need for business facilitation, which includes the simple processes that we do every day. With those few words, sir, I support the bill, and I'm obliged to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Senator Malilu. Senator Cummings.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I beg to move the suspension of this sitting of the Senate for lunch until 2:20 p.m. 2:45 p.m.
The question is that this sitting be adjourned until 2:45 p.m. today. The honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. The things the ayes have it, this sitting is suspended until 2:45 p.m. today.